Are there any more developed countries who don't have a problem with population collapse?
No,
There are none.
there are none.
Wow.
Not a single one. And in fact, the faster a country develops, the faster they run into these population problems. So, Korea, for example, Korea now has a birth rate of 0.78. That means, on average, each woman is having less than one baby in Korea.
Wow.
This is really potentially calamitous for their economy. But Korea is, a big economy, but when you take a look at a monster economy like China, which has similar birth rates now to Korea, they got there in about 30 years. They've turned that birth rate around to such a low level. And it's such an exponential shift in a place like China that they lost population last year. And based on their own official numbers, which they're not perfect with their numbers in China, they lost a population of 850,000 people last year. And to put that in context, that's roughly the size of San Francisco. And when you start losing population, it starts to happen exponentially. So year on year, they will lose more and more people. The first year of Japan's lost, it was a couple thousand people. Today, on average, annually, Japan is losing a population of about 750,000 people. That's roughly the size of Las Vegas if you want to measure it by city size.
Wow. How can that be? How can there be a under one is it fertility rate, under one birth rate? I would assume, isn't it in our human nature to get children to yeah.
Yeah, it is to some degree, but the nature of families and the nature of society really has changed radically over 250 years. In fact, I argue that it's really been this last century when things really turned around. Part of what happened, there are a number of different individual items that happened that contributed to this population change. The first one is that social protections came in place. So families used to operate as both social and economic units. But by the 20th century, it was less needed to have a full family unit with lots of children because the government, society would step in for some of those issues. Another big driving factor is the empowerment of women over the course of the past century or so. Women are more highly educated today. In major cities, they have wage parity or close to wage parity, so they're earning as much, if not more, than their male peers. So, this need to get married and have children, while it may be a biological imperative, we might feel like we want to do it, a growing cohort of people are choosing not to. They're actively choosing not to. And it starts early. So, it starts early, this shift. People are living at home with family for longer periods of time into their 20s and even their 30s. That means they're delaying things like getting married into their 30s or even their 40s. And when you delay marriage, obviously you're delaying having children too. And the likelihood that you can have multiple children really dwindles the further you go along. Again, this is actually because of biology. There's only so many people that can have babies past 40.
So what do the less developed countries who have higher birth rates have in common? Is that the inverse of that?
It is the inverse of that. Next to zero social protection, they have traditional family structures. They don't have, really robust prevention methods for having children. There's no real birth control. Condom use is much lower. And because of that, you end up having a lot more babies. You're also in a situation where uh, children are more necessary to the economic health of a household. So children start working at a younger age. And you have to remember that it wasn't that long ago in our countries that children worked. My grandfather in 1928 entered the mines in Western Pennsylvania at the age of 14. And that's not that long ago. It's just nearly 100 years ago that it was normal for children to go to work. That doesn't quite happen that much anymore, although there are some moves domestically here in the United States to allow children to work at younger ages, as young as 14.